In 1955, Doug Loudon.
So, how many of you remember 1955? There's one person. I was pretty young at the time, so I had to do a little research. So that's why I'm doing this speech, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome guests. Tonight you will learn about a few famous births during 1955, a few famous deaths during 1955, and some fun facts from 1955. Let's start with births. Two icons of the computer industry were born in 1955. Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. Giants in the computer industry. Unfortunately, we lost Steve a few years ago, but Bill's still around. There was one other famous birth, but we'll get to that a little bit later. There were also a couple of famous deaths during 1955. Albert Einstein died in 1955. He's the father of nuclear power, the guy who came up with the theory of relativity, E equals mc squared. And as it happens, the first nuclear-powered submarine was launched in 1955, the USS Nautilus. So, kind of coincidental there. Another famous death was James Dean, the actor. Very young man. He'd only been in a few movies, but the movies he was in showed that he had a really promising career. Unfortunately cut short. He was killed in a car accident right here in California. A very young man. Well, now a few fun facts from 1955. The average cost of a new house was $10,950. You can't even buy a car for that now. The average rent was $87 a month. The minimum wage was a whopping $1 an hour. And companies probably complained about it. The average price of a gallon of gas was 23 cents, except of course in California where it was $1.23. Inflation was a whopping 0.28%. 1955 saw the first Ford Thunderbird, the T-Bird. Any of you seen American Graffiti? The famous blonde in the T-Bird? Great car. Unfortunately, Ford tried to bring it back a few years back, but it didn't really hit it off, the two-seater. But it was a great car for its time. 1955 also saw the signing of the Warsaw Pact. The Warsaw Pact was an alliance between the Eastern European Communist bloc nations and the Soviet Union. It was a response to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which the United States is a major player in, and all the Western European democracies. And essentially what it said is an attack on one is an attack on all of us. So that was the Warsaw Pact versus NATO. That started in 1955. There were a couple of movies released in 1955 that are significant. First one is The 7-Year Itch, starring Marilyn Monroe. Why is that significant, you might ask? How many of you have seen the picture of Marilyn standing over the subway grate with the wind blowing her dress up around her ears and her hands down like this? That's from The 7-Year Itch. Another fantastic movie is Mr. Roberts, starring Henry Fonda and Jack Lemmon and Jimmy Cagney. If you've never seen it, I highly recommend it. Fonda plays Lieutenant Junior Grade Doug Roberts, an officer who cared about his men more than he cared about himself. And as a future naval officer, I patterned my Navy career after Doug Roberts. Great movie. 1955 saw the Brooklyn Dodgers beat the New York Yankees to win the World Series. That hadn't happened since 1900. That was right, the Brooklyn Dodgers. I said that right. The Dodgers didn't move to LA till 1957. Then probably one of the most significant events of 1955 was Rosa Parks being arrested for refusing to give up her seat to a white man in Montgomery, Alabama. And this triggered the Montgomery bus boycott by African Americans. Now, the idiots who ran the bus system didn't realize just how powerful this boycott was going to be. The majority of their riders were African Americans. So when they stopped riding the buses, the transit authority, darn near went bankrupt. But it took over a year for these knuckleheads to figure it out. But they finally caved in and allowed segregation of the buses. So that was a significant event. Now probably the most significant event of 1955. December 20th, 1955. It was a Tuesday. I was born. So that, the significant events of 1955. There's a few others. Eisenhower was president. It was a fun year. I'm Toastmaster.